Is digital making the world a better place? No. No, digital is not making the world a better place. Never before has a generation of people been so connected and yet so lonely. And what about the effects on the mental health? How would you cope without the internet in this day and age? Now, think about how your children might answer that question, given that they don't know a world without this technology. This all started back in the Industrial Revolution, a mere 200 years ago, and yet life back then was so very different. But does that mean that things have changed for the better? I'd like for you to imagine that all of Earth's history was compressed into a single 24-hour day. How long have humans been around for? In that day, it would be almost 7 p.m. before the first plant life appeared, shortly followed by the first aquatic life around 9 p.m. Dinosaurs would roam the Earth from 11 o'clock, and they went extinct by 11:40. It's only in the final minute of that day when we see the very first humans, and yet all recorded human history fits into just the final few seconds of that day. We've come a long way since then, more recently discovering electricity and how to harness it, which has led to the inventions of the telephone, the radio, TV, and now the internet. Could you imagine a day without the internet? Digital technology has changed our daily lives for better or for worse, and there's no way we'd go back to a time without them. When you think about it, the internet is a truly fascinating and wonderful creation, enabling us to communicate with people across the world instantly. We can search for almost any piece of human knowledge conceivable at the click of a button. It's our music libraries, our photo collections, our banks and our shops. The internet is the mitochondria to the modern lifestyle. In this new digital age, everybody has a voice, whether that's through tweets, viral videos or blog posts. It's now easier than ever to spread information. So I ask you, is that a good thing? Does this make governments more responsible? Does this make companies more transparent? How do you know what is real and what is fake news? I found it particularly interesting how much of a contrast there was between the mainstream media's coverage of the Notre Dame on fire and yet nothing. Nothing was mentioned about the Amazon rainforest on fire until the public spoke out. Through the sharing of stories and pictures on social media, the world took notice and could act on the problem. This shows us the power that digital technology brings for us. But our advancements with digital technology have not come without a cost though. Humans are the most dominant species on Earth, even though we account for just 0.01% of all life. Our desire to make ever smaller and ever smarter phones has required more and more natural resources. Fossil fuels are hundreds of millions of years old, and yet we've become so dependent on them as a source of energy, experts say all supplies will be consumed within the next 50 years. For many of us, that's not just our children's lifetimes, but that's within our own too. So we're all very aware of the problems we face and the damage we've done to the planet. We've cut down the rainforests, evicted innocent animals from their homes, and polluted the oceans. And it's all too easy to dismiss these as problems that are simply too big to tackle. You might find yourself saying, it's somebody else's problem, or I don't have the ability to make a difference. When I was writing this speech, I had a really difficult time deciding what I was going to talk about. Almost every single person who's helped advise me said it was too big of a scope. You can't possibly talk about the entire world's problems in a single 12-minute speech. But that's not how I see things. These issues we face are simply too big and too important to choose one particular subject. Look at Greta Thunberg, possibly the most influential 16-year-old in the world right now, because she is standing up to make a difference. Thanks to the powers of digital technology, Greta's story has gone viral. An individual from Sweden who simply cannot accept that she's facing growing up in a dying planet, all because her parents' generation did not take action. Some people say space is where we need to look for the solutions to our problems. Hey, we could mine the asteroids to get more precious metals we're running out of on Earth. Or maybe we could even colonize a whole new planet. Even if these options were feasible, they don't solve the core problems. So I'd ask you, in fact, how would you tackle climate change and global warming? I imagine many of you, like me, you're very aware of these problems and you care about them. How could you not? So you're already doing your best to recycle as much as you can and reduce your emissions where possible. But you're likely becoming somewhat disillusioned. Are your efforts really making a difference? There's just so much outside of your control. You can't easily escape plastic when you do your weekly shopping, and public transport isn't always the most convenient option, especially at the price it costs. But you see, everything we do has a consequence. Everything we buy, everything we eat, even our Google searches, there's the hidden cost of powering the internet. In fact, how much energy do you think is required to power the internet? A 2016 report from the Department of Energy suggested that figure was around 70 billion kilowatt hours per year. And that figure is only going to go up. For perspective, just a single kilowatt hour is enough energy to keep your smartphone charged for an entire year. But you see, it's not just the energy requirements of digital technology that's a problem. It's what we do with this technology when we deem it end of life. All of our old tech builds up into vast piles of waste, creating a very hazardous and toxic environment, which leaches into the air and soil around us. So we need to think about this more carefully before this brings about the end of our lives. So we need to make better decisions. That's clear. And in order to do that, we need to better understand the consequences to our actions. For instance, each time a customer asks you to migrate to the cloud, you have a choice. But what's the difference between them and their environmental impacts? Google is the only major cloud vendor to use 100% renewable energy. They're using 2.6 gigawatts to power data centers around the world. That's huge. That's more than double the 1.21 gigawatts required to power the DeLorean, which sent Marty McFly back to the future. Of course, all cloud vendors help to reduce electronic waste and energy usage. It's much more efficient to call one larger data center than it is several smaller ones. In business, the choice only comes down to the bottom line. But I believe we should all take the responsibility to dig a little deeper and make a more informed choice, considering the environmental impacts as well. So, is digital making the world a better place or not? I started by very boldly saying that it's not. And considering how little time we've been on the planet and the effects that we've had, I still think that's justified. Technology has got us into this state, but it's also the very same technology that can help to solve these problems. I believe if we all work together and use the powers of digital technology to inspire more environmentally friendly actions, digital can make the world a better place. Look at social media, for instance. We can't deny how powerful it is. Thanks to social media, the world leaders had to act on the Amazon rainforest fires. It enabled Greta to speak at the UN and sparked the School Strikes for Climate campaign. And who here remembers that Iceland advert about palm oil? That was deemed too political to air on TV. But thanks to social media, we all saw that important message. Something we can all do is to change our search engine from Google to Ecosia. They do the exact same thing, except when you search the internet with Ecosia, you can help to rebuild the forests around the world, which naturally combat global warming. But what if we could do this even more efficiently with technology? It turns out we can. These are some of the companies doing that already. They're using something called a direct air capture technology to take CO2 straight out of the air. Each plant from Carbon Engineering, for instance, does the same amount of work as 40 million trees. So what else could technology help us with? If you're anything like me and feeling more than a little confused about what you should be doing, maybe technology can help us out there too. It seems we're constantly being told that this is bad and that's bad, and you should stop that. So how do you know what you should be doing? How do you know what's best? This, I believe, is where digital technology can help bring the wealth of knowledge and information to everybody and make these more informed decisions. Imagine you're doing your weekly shopping and you have to choose between two products. They cost about the same. They look about the same. One is completely sustainable, but the other uses dirty palm oil and contributes to the destruction of the rainforests around the world. How would you know the difference? So what are we missing to make something like this happen? Why is it so difficult to read a product label and understand about its supply chain and the potential impacts it's had on the environment? There's so many different ways that we as consumers are given information, and they all vary. Typically, a product label will tell you to check local recycling. That's because in the UK, there's over 400 different councils, each with a different recycling policy. So we certainly have a lot of data, and we all carry our smartphones with us every day, and they are connected to the internet. So I would say the only thing we're missing to make something like this happen is to bring all of this together, something that can bring the wealth of knowledge and information to everybody in a simple and easy to use way. As simple as scanning a product with your phone. This can bring the power back to the consumer and turn the problem back around to the manufacturers, where it's then their onus to make sure their products and services are sustainable and more environmentally friendly if they want to compete for our consumer business. We could do this. In fact, I would say Atos could do this. The future of the planet is within our control. So I'd like to leave you with one final question. How are you going to use this digital technology to make a positive impact on the environment? Thank you.